did the Biden campaign decide to come here today?
Because you all are here. We've been incessantly covering this day in and day out, and we want to remind the American people ahead of the next debate, of the first debate on June 27th, of the unique, persistent, and growing threat that Donald Trump poses to the American people and to our democracy.
Make no mistake, this is election interference of the highest order.
As Donald Trump's Manhattan trial nears its verdict, the Biden campaign has officially and finally taken bold action with respect to this issue, even enlisting the help of a legendary Hollywood actor. And Donald Trump's MAGA campaign is furious. But before we unpack all that, if you end up liking this video and you want to support the channel, please be sure to hit the like, subscribe, and alert bell before you go. All right, friends, here's the situation. Donald Trump's election interference trial in Manhattan is in the closing argument stage, which means a verdict is rapidly approaching. As a sidebar, the legal consensus seems to be that Trump will either be convicted or, less likely, he will be the beneficiary of a hung jury, in which at least one juror decides not to convict along with the majority, and you need a unanimous decision for a conviction or acquittal. If that happens, the judge will order a mistrial. But the likeliest scenario, according to legal experts, seems to be a conviction, then a hung jury, and a full acquittal of Trump, in which he's exonerated and declared not guilty, seems almost impossible. But that's the situation, okay? Now, while all this has gone on, the Biden campaign has tried to operate above the fray. They haven't had a presence outside the Trump trial. They haven't been to Manhattan. Meanwhile, Donald Trump has actively enlisted the help of Republican lawmakers, Republican Speaker Mike Johnson, Republican senators and congresspeople to actually leave work, leave Washington, D.C., causing hearings to be rescheduled, the work of the people, so that they can show up and stand outside the Manhattan trial, the Manhattan courthouse, and spread Trump's propaganda into the ether, claiming that the Biden campaign or the Biden administration is weaponizing the Justice Department. While all that has gone on, the Biden campaign has stayed quiet until now. So Sam Stein reported, wow, after not really engaging the trial directly, the Biden camp is going there, literally. The Biden-Harris campaign will hold a press conference with special guests outside of the Manhattan criminal courthouse. This is a bold move. This is something that has not been done before. And I want to play two clips getting into it. The first clip here is from an official Biden campaign spokesperson answering an obvious question.
Why did the Biden campaign decide to come here today?
Because you all are here. We've been incessantly covering this day in and day out, and we want to remind the American people ahead of the next debate, of the first debate on June 27th, of the unique, persistent, and growing threat that Donald Trump poses to the American people and to our democracy. So since you all are here, we're here communicating that message, as we will do day in, day out until the debate in Atlanta.
Perfectly reasonable answer, but it infuriated Donald Trump's campaign. This is Stephen Chung, one of Donald Trump's spokespeople, and this is what he had to say.
Make no mistake, this is election interference of the highest order. Crooked Joe Biden and his campaign are in complete freak-out mode, and that's why they've gone back on the word, and now they've gone in bed with a highly conflicted judge. And now they're making a political mockery of this entire thing. The fact remains that President Trump will overcome. He'll fight these charges up and down, and there's nothing to stop the truth from coming out. Thank you.
So they're not happy that the Biden campaign has officially made a presence outside of Trump's courthouse. And again, it may or may not be effective, but that's what they've been doing. It's what MAGA has been doing since day one. And what's good for the goose must be good for the gander, right? But of course, MAGA only operates on double standards. If they didn't have double standards, they'd have no standards at all. So we'll see what happens from this. But I do want to play some clips from the press conference itself. The actor in question, of course, Robert De Niro, legendary Hollywood icon for several decades. We're going to play a clip of what he had to say about Trump, and then another clip in which he actually has an argument with a Trump supporter who attended the press conference.
Trump bought their votes with outrageous lies and empty promises. He got the most religious evangelicals to applaud a sinner who bragged about sexual assault, and who, just a couple of blocks from here, a jury found him liable for sexual abuse. Somehow, he even got self-styled patriots to support a man who called for terminating the Constitution and on January 6th rallied an angry mob to threaten democracy, leaving death and destruction in its wake. That's why I needed to be involved and wanted to be involved in the new Biden-Harris ad, because it shows the violence of Trump and reminds us that he'll use violence against anyone who stands in the way of his megalomania and greed. But it's a coward's violence. You think Trump ever threw a punch himself or took one? This guy who ran and hid in the White House bunker when there were protesters outside? No way. He doesn't get blood on his hands. No, he doesn't. He directs the mob to do his dirty work for him by making a suggestion.
So yeah, you have De Niro there decrying the violence of January 6th, and also Donald Trump's cowardice. I mean, these two things, are not mutually exclusive. Donald Trump, uses and engages in violent rhetoric all the time, and his supporters are uniquely violent with respect to, political polarization. But he himself often behaves like a thin-skinned coward. I'll also point out that in the aftermath, after Trump was spirited away to the White House bunker when a riot went on in D.C., when that was leaked to the press, Donald Trump reportedly told his defense secretary, Mark Esper, who confirmed this, by the way, a former Trump press secretary, he said that Trump told him that the leaker, the person who gave the leak that Trump fled to the bunker, needed to be identified, and then that person needed to be shot. That's how hypersensitive and weak Donald Trump is with respect to these things. So everything De Niro had to say was on point. Now, in this particular clip, De Niro gets into a back and forth with a Trump supporter there who refers to the two gentlemen behind De Niro, two Capitol police officers who were present on January 6th. The Trump supporter refers to them as cowards, and De Niro and he get into a back and forth.
They are the true heroes. These guys are the true heroes. They stood and put their lives on the line for these lowlives, for Trump.
They lied under oath.
They lied under oath.
Right.
Who lied under oath? What are you telling me?
Those two traitors behind you.
Excuse me?
Those two traitors behind you.
They lied under oath?
That's right.
What are you saying?
They're traitors.
They're traitors. I don't know. I don't even know how to deal with you, my friend. I don't even know how to deal with you. They stood there. They didn't have to. And there were other ones in there who probably were in with them a little bit too, and they found a way to get around. Not these guys. They stood there and fought for us, for you. For you.
De Niro's obviously upset here, and I understand why, because it's such an affront to any person who says that they're an American patriot. If they really mean that, then they should put country above party. And the thing with MAGA Republicans is that they don't. They put person, Trump, above party, Republicans above country, and we see it time and time again. And he has actually a pretty compelling point here, which is, listen, even if you wanted Trump to win the 2020 election, even if you supported his attempts to overturn the election, yes, these police officers who defended the Capitol against violent insurrectionist Trump supporters, they actually were in a roundabout way also fighting for you, the Trump supporter, because we can't have, free and fair elections and democracy in which Trump supporters can make their will known and vote in accordance with their beliefs if we don't have these things. And it was the violent insurrectionist Trump supporters threatening to upset the entire process, right? So yes, these people were fighting for liberals, progressives, conservatives, libertarians, what have you, in order for us to actually have a functioning democracy, which all these political blocs can make their will known in elections. You actually have to have a stable process. We'll play a couple of clips here. This is Harry Dunn, one of the Capitol police officers during January 6th. This is what he had to say.
The fight for a lot of us didn't end on January 6th, that evening when we went home. The fight still continues now. What happened that day was an attempt to overthrow an election. Donald Trump is the greatest threat to our democracy and the safety of communities across the country today. He has encouraged and continued to encourage political violence. We've been called traitors just today. We were all called traitors on January 6th for doing our job. And yes, we protected Republicans. We protected Democrats alike. It's not a
They did. I mean, again, it was Republican lawmakers, a Republican vice president, who were also under threat at the time from violent Trump insurrectionists. Now, the reason that I say all of this is bold is because, and Brian Butler, a political commentator, made this case weeks ago in one of his Substack messages. And so I'm just going to read this out here because I think it's a very persuasive case. He says, liberals have mocked the Republicans at Trump's beck and call, and understandably so. The spectacle is truly pathetic. But as is so often the case, Republicans evince an awareness that power-seeking has a theatrical element to it, while their opponents do not. We see Vivek Ramaswamy and Mike Johnson and J.D. Vance as the supplicants they are, but millions of others just see one-sided outrage over how Trump is being treated. That's not to say Democrats should deputize their own surrogates or engage in counter-intimidation of witnesses or jurors or court officers or their families. But they should have a presence at the courthouse to condemn the Trump surrogates and defend the independence of the justice system to the assembled press. And that's what the Biden campaign is doing now. The election is rapidly approaching, and the polls show it's going to be very, very close. Last time, it was effectively decided because of the Electoral College that we have by 44,000 voters in a handful of swing states, even though Biden won the popular vote by like 7 million votes. This is going to be a close election. And the polls constantly show that it's neck and neck, despite Donald Trump's various legal challenges, despite his corruption, et cetera, and so forth. The president is struggling. President Biden is struggling here. And with that in mind, I think the Biden campaign needs to carefully, thoughtfully, but yes, boldly take risks. Donald Trump is proof that the old way of doing things just doesn't work. I mean, if America functioned the way that people thought it functioned, Donald Trump would have no viable path to the presidency. And the fact is that he does. And that might mean that the Biden campaign and other establishment Democrats need to start thinking outside the box. And so even though they might be loath to try to comment on Donald Trump's legal woes the way that they did today, the way that Trump does all the time, that's the new norm. And we can't play by asymmetric rules. We have to get our heads in the game and play to win. And I'm starting to see some of that from the Biden campaign, even though it's long overdue. So it's risky. It may backfire. It may not work at all, but good on them for taking bold action. Let me know what you think in the comments.